The sun had barely risen over the small town of Willow Creek, but the courthouse steps were already crowded with faces hardened by years of survival. Among them stood a woman who looked almost invisible in the chaos, frail, draped in ragged shawls, and clutching the thin edges of her life as if they might tear completely away. Her name was Eleanor, and today, she had nothing to offer the world. No home, no possessions, no dignity, and no hope. Yet in her chest beat a heart so fierce that even the bitter wind seemed to hesitate before it. Eleanor's son, Jacob, was just 8 years old. Bright-eyed and endlessly curious, he had been her son through the darkest nights. But after his father's untimely death, Eleanor had spiraled into financial ruin. Bills had piled up, debts had multiplied, and finally, she had been left with nothing but herself and the small boy who depended entirely on her. The town had arranged an auction, not for material goods, but for Eleanor herself. A cruel, archaic practice where those who had fallen on the harshest times were offered to strangers for labor, care, or adoption. As Eleanor stepped forward, her bare hand shaking, she felt every pair of eyes upon her, curious, skeptical, indifferent. The auctioneer's hammer echoed ominously against the cobblestone. Starting bid, $10. A few murmurs, then silence. No one moved. The realization hit Eleanor like a blow. Nobody wanted her. Nobody valued her. And yet, she knew that standing there, she had one thing to offer that could not be measured in dollars or coins: her love for Jacob. Gathering every ounce of courage, she straightened her back and spoke, her voice trembling but clear. My son is waiting for you." The crowd shifted uneasily. Whispers rippled like a wave. A child? A widow with nothing? The room went still. Some looked away, ashamed to meet her gaze. But there was one man whose eyes lingered, a widower named Thomas, known for his quiet strength and generous heart. He had lost his wife the year before and understood grief in ways words could not capture. Eleanor repeated herself, louder this time. "Please, he is all I have left. If I cannot provide for him, if no one here sees the value in me, I beg you, see the value in him. He is waiting." For a heartbeat, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then, slowly, Thomas stepped forward. There was no calculation, no greed, no selfish intent, only the clarity of someone who had loved and lost. "I will bid," he said. His voice was steady, kind. Not for her, but for him. For her love, for her sacrifice. "I will make sure this child is safe." Something miraculous happened then. The cold, indifferent auction hall seemed to warm. People began to murmur, some shifting uncomfortably, others with tears in their eyes. A few started bidding, not for Eleanor, but to honor her plea, her courage, and her devotion. Within minutes, Thomas had secured her son's future. Eleanor collapsed into a chair, her hands trembling as she looked at the man who had given her hope. "Why? Why would you do this?" she asked, voice breaking. Thomas smiled softly. "Because love is never wasted. Because the world may overlook us, but kindness, true kindness, can rewrite destinies." Over the following weeks, Eleanor and Jacob began to rebuild their lives. Thomas became a steady presence, not as a replacement father, but as a guardian and friend. Jacob thrived in ways Eleanor had only dreamed of, learning, laughing, and discovering the world with a newfound sense of security. Eleanor, too, discovered a strength within herself she hadn't known existed. She found work in the town library, helping children read and explore, and she shared her story with anyone who would listen. The story of the auction spread throughout Willow Creek and beyond. People spoke of the widow who had nothing and yet gave everything. Her voice, her love, her heart. They spoke of the man who had seen humanity where others had seen emptiness. And slowly, quietly, the town began to change. Neighbors offered help, strangers volunteered, and the once harsh and cold community learned that even in the darkest of circumstances, one act of compassion could ignite a flame that warmed an entire town. Years later, Jacob would remember that day not as the auction of nothing, but as the day he learned the true value of love. He remembered his mother's trembling voice, the widower's gentle words, and the way the world had shifted in that moment. Eleanor, too, carried the lesson with her forever, that dignity cannot be measured in possessions, that hope can be found even when all seems lost, and that the love of a mother and the kindness of a stranger can transform despair into life itself. As the sun set over Willow Creek, Eleanor and Jacob walked home together, hand in hand. Their shadows stretched long across the cobblestones, but their hearts were light. In a world that had once seemed indifferent, they had discovered the power of humanity. And in that discovery, they had found not just survival, but a life brimming with hope, love, and infinite possibilities. The auction had taken everything from her, yet it had given her the most precious gift of all, a reminder that love, courage, and compassion are worth far more than any material possession, and that sometimes the smallest voice can echo across the world in ways no one could imagine.